these dogs would have came with them. So we have border collies in Ireland for, I suppose, 800 years. Now, since 1906, there's a stud book for the dogs. So what that means is the working dogs can be recorded back to 1906. So that is the International Sheepdog Society. So that means all the dogs go back, all the registered dogs go back to 1906. So basically it's a little bit like breeding racehorses or breeding cattle or breeding anything. We breed from the best to the best. Now we don't always get the best, but we have the best bred dogs in the world as a result of it, because we follow typical lines. I have the same line of working dog for 40 years, even though I only look about 25, I know. Now, so basically a decent border collie has to be an addict. So I use the old racehorse jobby. There's lots of racehorses, but there's not too many of them fit to win races. And it's the same with the working dog. Just because it's a border collie does not mean for one instance that it's going to be capable of working sheep and cattle. That's why we are breeding from the best bloodlines in the world, and that doesn't guarantee us success either. It just gives us a better chance of getting a decent working dog. So a decent border collie has to be an addict. The drug is livestock, so they have to be addicted to work. So when they're little puppies, we let them run around and be puppies, and I don't start to train dogs till they get to about 7 or 8 months. They have to be matured mentally and physically. Mentally is equally importantly as physically. So they have to be strong in the mind and strong in the body. And we start to assess them. So they have to be addicts, but it's like baking a cake. You need ingredients. And if you don't have good ingredients, you don't get a good cake. So they have to have certain ingredients. So they have to have the capability to move livestock. Some of them look like superstars. They have all the sexy moves. They look like they're doing a lot of work. The sheep are looking at them saying, yes, you're going to do what? And the dog has to have a thing we call power and push. So that's one of the main things for me. So the dog has to walk up to the sheep and say, what did you say, sheep?
Yeah.
And walk right to the sheep's head and say, move or else. And the sheep would say, okay, I'm moving. So that's the dog that has what we call power, right? Now, if they don't have power, the sheep will look at them and say, yeah.
Whatever.
So the border collie will come down behind the sheep and say to the sheep, sheep, you're looking fantastic. Is there any possibility you might please move? And the sheep will look at him and say, you don't have what it takes to move me. So they will hit the dog that hard with their head, they would break your leg, and they would run that dog out of the field.
Wow.
So the dog has to have power and push. That's one of the main ingredients. They also have to be free in their movement, not sticky or too much eye. Some of them have a thing called too much eye, so they're more like gun dogs than they are working dogs. They get stuck and they hit the ground and they're stuck staring at the sheep and they can't move. So we're sending these dogs a long distance on the mountain. If they see sheep, they'll stop and they're no use. So it's just not that simple to get the real deal, as to say. So we assess them, we see have they got these ingredients, as I say, and then we start to train them. So the first thing you should do with a young dog is take them away from the sheep, bring them somewhere there's no distraction, bring them into a little paddock where there's no sheep or cattle. It's a little bit like you trying to teach a small child something when the cartoons are on the television. They'll be looking up and saying, yeah, I'll do that now in a minute, and they won't be taking any heed of what's going on. So the young dog is the same. If there's sheep in the field, they should be lockjawed looking at the sheep. So we take them away from the sheep. We teach them 3 things. We teach them to lie down, to stop, we teach them to come to us, and we teach them to stay there. Lie down, that'll do, stay there. And we do that in a little paddock where there's no distraction. So they're looking at me saying, yes, I get exactly what you're saying. Now, the reason the stop command, all this job is common sense. There's no rocket science in this job here at all. This is all common sense. So the reason we put a stop on the dog, if we're moving livestock on the side of a mountain near a cliff or near a busy road, you can imagine your dog is going to run out in the road down there. If you can't stop him, he's dead. If you can't stop a dog moving livestock near a cliff, the livestock will be pushed over it. So it's all common sense. So the stop is the most important command. That'll do is to get the young dog to come to us, but it's also the start of teaching the dog to what we call shed or select sheep. So if we want to take sheep out of the flock, this is the start of teaching that young dog, getting the young dog to come straight to us. And of course, stay there. Then if we're moving livestock and we want to leave the dog stopped, when we're opening a gate or something, we just tell them to stay there. Now, we then introduce the dog to sheep. Okay, now where did I get a sheep? I haven't a great sheep here. What did I use here? I'll use this leaf here. See this leaf? Look. Here we have the sheep, okay? Now, the end of my crook we'll call the dog. Now, the natural instinct of a border collie is always to get to the opposite side of the sheep, right? So, no matter where I go, that young dog will automatically, it's like a weather vane, they'll automatically fall to 12 o'clock. Do you understand?
Yep.
So if I walk in this direction, 12 o'clock. If I walk here, 12 o'clock. Now, what can happen is a young dog can run in there, go for a grip, pull out of the sheep's wool, go a bit nuts, a bit like a teenager, but eventually they'll settle down and they will try and hold the sheep to me at 12 o'clock. So I head off walking backwards around the field, getting the dog to bring the sheep after me. If the young dog is going too strong, lie down. I can now stop the dog, yes?
Yes.
So, we then start to put what we call sides on the dog, left and right. Because the dog is automatically at 12 o'clock, now we can't make this young dog go to 12 o'clock. This is a natural instinct. And any decent young dog will automatically be 12 o'clock and going like this, look. So, the natural instinct, the dog will be spinning around the sheep like that. That's their natural instinct. So I get out there and I put a command on that. So I'll say to the dog, let's say for these two dogs around, come by. So I'll say, come by, come by, come by, wait to me, wait to me, wait to me. So now we have the dog knowing its left from its right. So do you get that? So if the dog is going in this direction, I'll keep walking like this with the young dog and I'll keep saying, come by, which is basically left, come by, right, wait to me. So I stop. Now the dog has a thing called the point of balance. The young dog wants to balance the sheep roughly to me at 12 o'clock. So that young dog will always slow to stop at 12 o'clock, but I'll push them on around and I'll stop them where I want them to stop. The reason being is that the reason we put left and right on the dog is that eventually we're going to teach the dog to drive the sheep, right? To push the sheep away from us. The natural thing is for the dog to bring the sheep to us. Sheep and cattle have eyes in the side of their head. They have peripheral vision, they can see behind them. So now we have the dog here, right? So now we can teach the dog to drive the sheep up the mountain as well as take the sheep down, right? You getting this? Yeah?
Yes.
Now, the next thing we teach that young dog to do is to go and get the sheep. We call this the outrun. Because the dog is automatically at 12 o'clock, we now have that young dog lying down. So I say to the young dog, lie down. I get between the sheep and the dog, yeah? The young dog is lying here, lie down, come by. The dog will go around the sheep. About 50 metres we let the sheep off, bring the sheep back to us.
Okay.
We do the same on the other side and we keep making the distance greater. So we start at 50 metres, then 100 metres, 200, 300, 400, 500. Eventually these dogs will go a mile or more for sheep.
Yeah.
But that's how